I'm doing well. This morning we're going back to the committee's work, the Parliament's committee's work, and there was something that was said on first day by COP George Mensah. That seemed to initially to agree with your position that this work cannot be done without bringing in the president. But on day two, it was now saying go to IGP. It was IGP that set up the recording that his intel he has intel that suggests that the IGP set up the recording, so he has the original tape. What do you make of these two positions, and what does it say about his testimony in general?
Well, when I spoke to you the other day, I said that the fact that Bugan Abu had said he gave the original tape to meant that it was difficult to proceed without reference to the original tape, and that the fact that Bugan Abu came and said that the person on the tape was so and so doesn't necessarily mean that they will come and confirm that yes, we indeed were the ones on the tape. And after it happened, he went before the committee and said that the tape that the committee had was doctored, and that he thought that the presidency should be prevailed upon to bring the original tape, because there were some things that he thinks were said that were not on the tape. And so he used that as an excuse to refuse to answer a lot of questions. And I think at some point, the chairman for the committee, Honorable Atachia, indicated that, well, it's possible that they will have to get the presidency involved in order to get the tape. As to his U-turn that perhaps now they should look at the IGP, I suspect that after he went home, he got scolded for bringing the president in, and therefore perhaps decided to do this U-turn now to focus on his main target, which is the Inspector General of Police. So I between the time he went to the House, this tape has been in the public domain for many months, for many weeks. The fact that he only had that intel between the time he brought the president in and the time he came the next day should tell you that somebody must have scolded him for drawing the president into that investigation. And I'm thinking that's why he saw the Inspector General as a soft target. But that's what I think.
But do you still stand by your suggestion? Because even the man who says, I recorded the tape, says the president has the original. That still, it should go back to the president. They should speak to the president at least.
Sana, I said this without even knowing what he will come to the committee to say. Because the primary tape, if you are supposed to authenticate a tape and you have a secondary tape and somebody has the original, I think it's just a matter of course that you would like to have your hand on the original tape, especially when another witness has come to say that the one that the committee has is doctored. So the only one that is not doctored is the original tape, and the original tape is with the president. So when Bugri Nabu said that he gave the original to the president, I knew that the stage was set for the presidency to be brought in to produce the original tape, because it came to a point where he argued so hard that the committee chairman was compelled to say that, look, we have to, if you think that this tape is not the original, we don't know. We don't know which tape is original and which tape is not. We don't know what is doctored and what is not. So if you think that the presidency has the original tape and you need it, we could lean on the presidency to produce the tape. But like I told you the other time, the presidency has nothing to do with it. It is the president, because when Bugri Nabu spoke, he didn't say that he gave the tape to the president. He said he gave it to the president, a definite person. So if they needed to authenticate the tape, then I think to still get hold of the tape in the possession of the president and ask him a few questions. That's the basis for which I said it. I did not even know that this guy will come and say that, look, the tape is doctored, and that since the tape originated with the president, the president should produce the tape. So it was just a matter of course that the president was going to be brought in. I still think that the president must be asked to produce the original of the tape. For all you know, the ones that they cut out from what COP Mensah is saying, some things have been cut out. So what is it that has been cut out? For all you know, what we all have heard is even minced meat. It's small. Perhaps there's more explosive things in the things that have been cut out. He was at the meeting. Okay, there were two people at the meeting. One says, "I recorded the tape. I gave the original." The other says, "Well, yes, you recorded the tape, but this one is doctored, and there's a bigger tape that contains a lot more information that I'm not seeing here." So what is it that is on that tape? It would be interesting. Wouldn't it be interesting for the nation to know? And wouldn't it be interesting for the committee to find out whether perhaps there are some more explosive things that is on the tape that we all do not know? So that's why I think that it will be important to ask the president to produce the original.
Well, having said that, let me then go back to his testimony. Now, you're talking about a COP, Alex Mensah, who has occupied several directorial positions and has headed several police stations and, of course, police commands from district or divisional all the way to regional levels and playing roles nationally. So I expected a man who walked in, very cautious, knowing the implications of what he has already said and what he might subsequently say. I must say, so far, my expectations, what has happened is contrary to my expectations. What do you think, after listening to him for 2 days, what are your observations of his mannerism, some of his answers to the questions, and the implications of some of the things he said?
Well, first of all, I think before I go there, I think we have to commend the committee. So far, I think they are doing a good job. I have been particularly impressed by the chairman, Honorable Atachian, because most times when cases like this happen, it tends to be a little bit more political and there's always this obstruction. But he himself asked some really very serious questions. And that has given the floor to a lot of the members to ask very, very important questions. And I think that the chairman and the co-chair and the members have done quite. They've asked some really important questions, and we need to congratulate them for that. As for COP Mensah, I think that the nation must should have a good sigh of relief that such a dangerous element is leaving the police service. Because if you look at him, if you listen to his mindset, first of all, he's not. The last time I told you that it will be interesting to understand how an element like this can lay in the police service and for 31 years, and this never came up. What kind of service are we running that produces characters like this? Of course, we all have to be careful that he doesn't become the symbol of the entire police service, because there are some really wonderful police officers who serve this nation devoid of politics. But I'm very happy, and I hope a lot of Ghanaians are, that such a dangerous element is finally leaving the service. It's also a sigh of relief, really, that in all his 31 years, nobody found him worthy to appoint him as IGP. Even his own political party did not find him worthy enough. And you can understand why. Because I'm sure nobody would have told him directly, the way you are, you cause trouble, you destroy the nation, or maybe you're not intelligent enough. But after 31 years, he's still retiring as a COP. He's caused enough damage, but I am happy also that none of the presidents found him worthy enough to appoint him to that august position, which he so wanted and lobbied everybody for. I also heard from the committee that apparently he's being considered as a very prominent chief in the Ashanti region, and it's a big pity, really, that such a polarizing character will be going to work as a chief. So you can see that this thing is not going to end now. First, there were speculations that he probably could even go and contest as a member of parliament, or he probably could become a chief, where he's supposed to superintend over both NDC and MPP and all Ghanaians. With this mindset, if you listen to the way he thinks, I don't know the kind of leadership he can provide to his community. He's a very, very polarizing individual, and I hope that he's learned some few lessons in his latter days, and that probably will guide him. It's also a pity for me, listening to him, that he managed to grow and be entrusted with so much within the police service, becoming Director General of Operations, becoming somebody that was responsible for supervising elections in the Ashanti region, for example. And you know that for many years there's been all sorts of speculations about, elections in the Ashanti region. So to see that he was in charge of supervising elections during all those suspicious days is a testimony that something was going wrong. And, they say that people that the gods want to kill, sometimes they first make them crazy. And I think that even though he managed to hide from everybody, the whole nation, I think God decided in his latter moment, in his final moments, to expose him. And if you listen to him, he's a very bitter man. He's a very bitter man that he after all these years, he thought he was working for a political party, but then people like Dampari came and bypassed him. That is some sort of pain you can see he harbors. Not just that, he thinks Dampari is not as politically is not a political operative like he is. Yet he did not just bypass him and become COP ahead of him. He's become IGP and he was not considered. So he harbors a particularly bitter animosity against the Inspector General of Police, if you listen to him. But what struck me is his boldness to admit to things that can completely undo him. If you look at the laws of the police service and you look at some of the things that he's admitting to, I think for him, he feels like his party is in power, and no matter what he says, nobody will be able to do anything to him, or nobody will do anything to him, because for a man that has done so many political things, maybe he also has a few things on a lot of politicians in his party. So they will not also dare to try to prosecute him. But I hope that someday he'll be brought back to his senses and that he will face the law to test whether or not he was in violation of the rules of service, of the rules of engagement in the police service. Because you see, he's retiring, and he obviously will retire on his severance awards. And it would be good for someone to test that whether or not he deserves all that severance award. After all the things he has said and done in the police service, I'm sure in his period he must have done some good things. But we are talking about the law here. Some of the things he's admitted to are things that could come back to haunt him if it is pursued. I would have wished that at least somebody will pick on some of the admissions he has made and go to court and test whether or not this is someone that lived up to his oath of office, or this is someone that still deserves severance awards after such a conduct in public in the police service. So I feel like he's actually good. Is good riddance. It's really good riddance that somebody like that is leaving the police service. Like I said, I just hope that somebody will set him as an example, because the example now where he is, he thinks that the police service can be divided into two. You can do whatever you want so long as you believe in the political cause. The oath of office does not matter. If the nation allows this to go without any proper deterrence, it will be a disaster for the service and a disaster for democracy. He must be set an example. He must be used as an example to deter all sitting politically minded police officers who are just there doing their party's work and frustrating our forward march in our democracy. If there's no proper deterrence to this guy, it will be a bad example, in my opinion.
Two questions arises. Now, the first one about a deterrence. There's been a suggestion that what he suggested in that audio, and the former chairman of the National Democratic Congress, Chairman Fosu Ampofo, is before a court for allegedly a plot to subvert the will of the people. Then there's also, I think has to do with causing fear and panic among others. There's also currently a senior police officer, ACP Dr. Agojo, and a military officer, as far as I recall, and some other person standing trial before a court. Also, this relates to WhatsApp messages, and the allegation is that they were plotting a coup. This is a man who was plotting to subvert the will of the people, that he wanted the position so that he can ensure that what he was thinking in his mind is what applies and not what the people wanted. If you say a deterrence, what are you thinking only about his actions as a professional police officer, or you are thinking also to the point of what is the cost of subversion or a plot to subvert?
Well, I mean, when you talk about deterrence, you go into the realm of law. And for me, because the guy worked within a certain legal framework, and so any deterrence that you try to exert will be within that framework of the law. So the law allowed him and gave him privileges, and the law gave him responsibilities. So did his responsibilities include subverting the will of the people? Was this kind of conduct in violation of those rules of engagement? Because you see, we also have to differentiate between all those tapes. Okay, one was for law enforcement purposes. I think one was recorded by the military, some were recorded by individuals, some were recorded by all of these. But for me, the most important thing is the fact that in this case, he has admitted to the tape and the content of it. And not just that, he's gone ahead in the full glare of the nation to make even more serious admissions. And in most cases, re-emphasizing what was on the tape. So let's even say that the tape does not exist. The kind of things he has said before the committee itself, that he, in the committee hearing, he said, well, he's a sympathizer of the MPP. In the tape, when he thought no one was listening, he said he is a member of the New Patriotic Party. And when he was pushed to the wall, he said, well, there's a difference between a sympathizer and a member. So if he knew that there was a difference between a sympathizer and a member, why did he say in the tape that he is a member of the New Patriotic Party and not a sympathizer. Why did he say that? And I think this is something that requires more investigation. Because you see, you cannot say that you can contest for a member of parliament for the MPP if you haven't been a member of the party for a certain number of years. So when he said that he's a member of the MPP, I think that is something that must be investigated. And you heard the chairman say that if he's pushed to answer that question, that will have very dire consequences for him as a sitting police officer. So it is there that it is obvious that they are trying to protect him and feel like after 30 years maybe we shouldn't take this too far. But you see, people have been targeted for far less than what this gentleman has done. People have been targeted and prosecuted and harassed for far too less than what he has admitted to do it. So in my opinion, even the committee even thinks that some of the things he has said, if they were to probe further, it will have very dire consequences for him. I think those dire consequences must be applied to him. And that's why I feel like he should be put out there as a deterrent, because if he is not held accountable for the things he has said, then the precedents will be wrong, right? Because we already have precedents, like you rightly said. People have been prosecuted and punished for something that is far too less than what this gentleman was plotting to do. So the deterrence that I'm talking about is all encompassing and must play out within a certain legal framework. And that framework is the law that governs the conduct of police officers and the law that governs our national security and the integrity of police officers. So whichever way you look at it, the only way to show sitting officers and build confidence in the police service is that we as a people do not support and encourage such kinds of officers within the service. If we don't do that, this is a guy who boldly say that the police service is divided into two, MPP and NDC. Okay? So basically, if you don't set an example, you're almost somehow subtly endorsing, confirming the idea that, well, if his party is in power and he says all these things and they do nothing, then it means it's true. Other police officers will do far worse in future. So deterrence is there, whether legal or security, to ensure that integrity is always brought back to the service. And I think that it will be a travesty of justice if he is allowed to just get away with what he tried to do and go back home to enjoy his severance after all these years of partisan political conduct in the police service in clear violation of the law.
Beyond the deterrence being set, I guess you're worried when he said that I'm not the only one of my kind in the police service. Maybe his has been translated in the form of bitterness, but he says there are more.
Yes, and you can see that there is more. So for me, the last time I spoke to you, I told you that it would be good to listen to this officer. You remember I said that? It would be good to listen to the officer to understand the psyche of some of the police officers that we have in the service. And boy, he came out to spill out because he realized that he could get away with it. He realized that there are people in this government who would dare not probably touch him. You remember he was in charge of elections in many places while still being an ardent supporter of the New Patriotic Party. You realize that he was the director of operations during the time of Dayawaso Wogon. All of those things happened under his watch. So perhaps he knows. You remember he said something to the effect that he was part of the strategic team that planned the Ayawaso West, I think Ayawaso Wogon by-election. So who were those members? And what was the strategic planning about? Was the violence that erupted there part of it? And so you see that this gentleman has been around quite a bit and has been doing quite a bit of damage. And so for me to just let this slide would be a very, very unfortunate thing, because when things like this happen, because the committee also has a responsibility for sending recommendations, isn't it? So what recommendation would they send? Would they send a recommendation that the officer is in violation of his oath of office and the law? Do you think that he would say, the committee would say a thing like that? So I'm looking forward to something, but I just think that recommendations are just not enough. Just administrative recommendations are not enough. But it doesn't appear to me that the committee will go there so as to the extent of recommending that he must be punished legally for his conduct, especially if you hear the comment that if he is allowed to answer some of the questions that border on his membership of the New Patriotic Party, it could have dire consequences for him as a serving officer. So when you hear things like that, you already know that those will not be part of the recommendations that the committee will bring out.
Well, I guess we're still paying attention to what is happening before the committee. But before I let you go, I know we have had this discussion on the OSP's work on the Cecilia Dapa matter. And you were impressed that at least he moved on the properties and the accounts of Madam Cecilia Dapa. Now, what then do you make of the fact that he's lost all those things that he seemed to have a clear handle on, because the court has decided that he should release all of them back to Madam Cecilia Dapa because, in the court's own words, he filed it out of time and didn't convince them enough. In other words, he was to a large extent negligent. What do you think?
So what I said in respect of the special prosecutor was the fact that I liked his element of surprise on the suspect when the suspect came before them. I think in the mind of the suspect, he was just going to go and attend to the invitation and come back home. But they were surprised with the search. And that search is what has brought all these revelations out. And so I was impressed that the surprise element was used. But you remember that the very early times when we started discussing this issue, I had discussed with you that when you are doing investigations, you need to plan. And part of the planning also includes looking at the laws under which you work, under which the investigations will be conducted. Otherwise, you're going to go all the way to the end only to be told that what you have done is against the law. I said that very clearly. Now, what the court is basically trying to say, quite unfortunately, is the fact that they feel that he filed the application for the seizure. He was beaten by time. Well, the OSP obviously disagrees with the court and has issued a public statement to that effect. But, what is the court there to do? The court, like I said the last time, the OSP is supposed to hold the suspect accountable, and the courts are supposed to hold both the suspect and the OSP accountable, and then the media is supposed to hold the OSP, the suspect, and the courts all accountable. So it's something that, and what we're doing today is also discussing what the court ruling really is. I want to understand, the spirit of the ruling, really. Somebody has, because the court is a place where you gather evidence on the record, isn't it? This gentleman has exhibits. Okay, the money and the properties that he has seized is Adapa is a key component of the investigation. Those are what they call in law exhibits. So when you ask an investigator to return the exhibits to the suspect, what does that mean in law? Could he still be counting on that as exhibits in the possession of the suspect? What is the spirit of, let's even assume, Senna, let's even assume, this is not to admit that this is the scenario, but let's even assume that the OSP was 1 day late in filing for the confirmation of the seizure. The court is not denying the fact that the properties are essential to the investigation. But they are saying that the time frame by law, within which he was supposed to file it, he was late. As they say, he who seeks justice must come with clean hands. So it is a very interesting scenario, but I'm a little worried about the spirit of the ruling, because it is almost like removing a key component upon which the investigation hinges from the special prosecutor. Because one of the expected end results of an investigation of this nature is to deny the suspect, if he is successful, is to deny the suspect the proceeds of crime. So if it is eventually proven that Madame Cecilia Dapa illegally acquired those properties, under the law, she is supposed to be denied the peaceful enjoyment of that property, whether it's cash or buildings or cars or whatever it is. That is the aim, one of the key aims of this investigation. So when you give that property back to the suspect, you don't just undermine the investigation, you will end up maybe 2 years down the line when this case is completed, that the money has been spent. So by this judgment, the court would have given an opportunity or would have curtailed that aspect of the investigation or that outcome where the process of crime is now being enjoyed. The whole essence of deterrence in crime is that there will be punishment for you and that you will still be denied the opportunity to enjoy the fruits of your crime. If the suspect is handed back the proceeds, then what is the essence of the investigation and the prosecution? So at one point, you also want to say that the special prosecutor must play according to the law. But at the other side, you also want to wonder why a judgment like this, that you didn't file it on time. The special prosecutor could be fined, could be warned, could be doing anything, but then underscore the fact that because this particular exhibit is so crucial to the investigation, giving it back to the suspect will be a travesty of justice. You see, Sana, when somebody says he sees money as part of investigation from someone, what people just assume that, well, it's money, and so if it's given back to her, if it is wrong, they can go back for it. That is a complete misunderstanding. You know, every money has serial numbers, okay? All the currencies that we use have serial numbers. The serial numbers are there for a reason. It tells you a lot about the history of that money. When it was printed, when it was issued, within what time frame all these monies came into the possession. You can just know that by the physical examination of the currency in the possession of the suspect or the OSP. So when you give the money back to the suspect and he goes now to spend it and get a new set, you completely have dismantled the investigation. So I feel sad, really. I feel really sad that this judgment has come. It is not because I'm jubilating that the woman's property has been seized, but it is part of an investigation. And I think that is a very crucial part of that investigation. And a ruling of that nature, in my opinion, will stands the risk of completely undermining and demoralizing the OSP.
Well, there are those who suggest that he should have known better.
I mean, I said that from day one, that if you start an investigation, first you have to review the laws under which you conduct that investigation. I think I was very clear about that when we discussed in the very early ages about planning, that if you seize a property and you're supposed to go before the court before a particular day, you must review that law before you conduct this full-scale investigation. That law must be a guiding principle in everything you do anytime you're confronted with seizure. So if the case of the judge is that he was 1 day late, then who do we really blame? Will you blame the judge who tries to enforce the law, or will you blame the officer who is 1 day late? So at the end of the day, those of us who speak on this issue, must hold all of these people accountable. But at the end, I agree with you that if it turns out, because it appears that the OSP disagrees, if he disagrees so vehemently as to the point of issuing a public statement that he disagrees, then maybe he should appeal the particular ruling. All the way, he has the opportunity to appeal all the way to the Supreme Court. So he says he respects the judge's ruling, but he disagrees with it. If you disagree with a ruling of this nature, there are procedures under the law to challenge it. I think the next phase is that we want to see him go before the appeals court to appeal against the judgment and tell the appeals court that that ruling will put a complete stop to the investigation, will dismantle the entire investigation. Aside from the fact that he was not late as the judge claimed he was, this ruling, if made to stand, will collapse the investigation. So if he is that confident that the judge was wrong, he's a lawyer, he knows exactly what to do. But like I said, anytime you get involved in high-stake investigations like this, you always have to cross your T's. If you don't, they will finish you at the last. He is even lucky. The last time I said to you that you could have gone all the way to the end, and then they will come back and say, well, you seized this property illegally, and you have withheld it illegally, and for that reason, the whole investigation is wrong. And so it is very important that if you are conducting an investigation, you have to review the laws under which you really conduct that investigation. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next, because we all know that if you're not comfortable with a ruling, you have the opportunity to appeal all the way to the Supreme Court. So let's see what the OSP does. But I think this is a very good lesson for him, that he will not be left off even in the least opportunity. This is a high-stake investigation. I don't think that he has even gone even 10% yet. So if he allows these kind of frustrations in his way, it will really affect him, to affect the results of the investigation.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well.
Well, Mr. Raymond Archer speaking to us on the investigations as has happened so far, OSP, and then on the matter that's happening currently in Parliament.